Hello, 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 Billy West. What is going on? I mean, of course, I know who you are, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody that's watching?
Hi, everyone. My name is Billy West, and I am a direct mortgage lender here in the Jacksonville area. I have been specializing in the purchase transaction for over 20 years.
Nice, nice, nice. Awesome. So I want to ask you a few questions because you've been in the business a while. You know what it is, and I feel like you have some insight to certain things that other people may not. And as you know, I work with a lot of millennials and Gen Zers trying to get them to, you know, get to purchase a house, and I'm sure they understand the reason why, but the how might alleviate them sometimes. But sometimes I run into these. I like to explain to people that it's a little bit different of a process than what it was, I think, before. There's a little bit of inertia we have to get past first before we start to get through the process of getting pre-approved and all that kind of good stuff. So I wanted to talk to you about that aspect of it. What is your opinion? Why do you think it's so hard now for millennials and Gen Zers to actually like start the process towards home ownership?
So many different reasons why it's so hard to start that process. One of the biggest reasons I think is just debt in general.
Mhm.
Right now, the affordability factor is really coming into play. Younger generations are incurring more debt, and the largest of that debt being student loan debt.
Mhm.
And I think that makes everyone feel, that they're not going to be eligible for a home purchase. And really, they need to call. We need to call. We need to see what the programs are. We need to see what the process is. We need to see what that debt looks like and where they're at in a stage in their life.
Do you think that they have a little bit of fear and trepidation because of those student loans? They think that they're not going to get approved for the house, or maybe approved for the house they want.
Well, there's two sides to that. One, not approved for the house that they want. And I love the fact that you started with one of your quotes saying that everybody wants to buy their last house first.
Hmm.
There's always a first house, especially, the average life of a mortgage loan is about 7 years. So
Hmm.
it doesn't need to be that first house. And I always tell people there's only certain things you can control in the process. One of them is going to be, what their mortgage payment is, right? So once you purchase a house, that mortgage payment's not going to change unless taxes and insurance go up, slightly each year, but they can control that. If you're renting, you can never control that process of it. And so I just think it's the fear of the unknown and knowing what they're getting into and what owning a home entails.
So, do you think that social media and keeping up with the Joneses is kind of playing a factor with millennials and Gen Zers when it comes to them trying to buy their last home first? Do you think that's at all playing a factor?
Absolutely. So, everybody, once they jump into this and they're wanting to get into it, they get more excited, I feel, about the possibility of what could be instead of what they can afford.
Mm,
I always like to say it's more about their target monthly payment, the comfortable factor, not necessarily the maximum that they can afford. But then
mm,
we have a lot of the millennials and Gen Zs hopping in, and unfortunately, their income and their wages, well, it's not just them, it's everybody in general, are not
right.
keeping up with the prices of goods, just cost of goods in general. So
Hmm.
that affordability, where before we could have hopped in and they're buying a $500,000 house, for example, they're looking at something that's in the fours, and it's really just a tough market right now.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So it's where people are probably looking at it before they were like, okay, I could afford this house 2 years ago when money was just being given away. They're looking at it now and they're realizing they can't get what they got before, and that's what's playing a factor
Yeah. So
into. Oh, okay.
instead of trusting the professional and letting us give that education, I feel like a lot of these buyers go to the online, or they go up to the media, social media, any of the online tools that they can access. And these buyers that have owned homes were locked in at 3 and 4%.
Hmm.
Reality is that's not a rate that's available in today's market. So you talk to your neighbor who owns a $500,000 house and they have a payment of X, and next thing you know, hey, I can afford that. And online tools are great, but they're never going to be as good as your trusted advisors, right? Your loan officer and your agent. And I have buyers who come to me, they want to get pre-qualified, give me a set dollar amount. we go through payments and they've gone online and not added in taxes, not added in insurance. They
Mm.
don't have 20% down, so they didn't count mortgage insurance. And they're wanting to know why this full payment is way more than, an online calculator gave them.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. Do you think that let's say somebody that's 25 years old and wants to buy, a house that you have now, do you think that maybe they're looking at, oh, this is what my parents had, so this is kind of what I want, and not realizing what work you've put in to get to where you're at?
100%. So, and I think that has a lot to do with why they want to buy that last house first, is because
Mhm.
they're all remembering that house that they grew up in, right?
Mm.
And not realizing the work and the effort that their parents put in to get in that position. And also, they don't remember the first house that they lived in. So they're all just
Right.
skipping to, hey, what did the Joneses buy?
Right. So I have discussion a lot with different people, and we talk about like the why a lot. Like we talk about the why, the reason why you should buy, the reason why you buy. And this is year 6 for me being an agent. And I think the first 5 years is me trying to explain the reason why to do it. And then not the first 5, maybe like the first like 2. And then we got to the point where we started talking about the how, because that's the age when everybody wants to know the how. What would you tell somebody that's like, hey, look, I want to get a house. Maybe I'm a little bit diluted with what I want, but that's what I want. Like,
Mhm.
how do I get there in general? How could the average person get there?
Yeah, so it's okay to want what you want, and especially on something as big as a purchase of a home, it's such a big investment. It's okay to want that as long as it does fall within that affordability. Not only can they qualify, but also that comfort level of where they want to be monthly. There's always a way to get there. And I
Mhm.
think with the programs that are available, the down payment assistance, there's 100% programming. 100% financing that is out there. There's a way to get there if it's realistic.
So then that means, so I'm your son, right? And I'm like, Mom, I'm ready to buy a house, right? And um I don't know where to look. I kind of have an idea because you kind of told me some stuff, Mom. So I'm like, I got a little bit of money saved up. I'm thinking I'm gonna use some down payment assistance. Um, is there a type of house that you would suggest? Is there, like, should I shoot for the moon? Like, how would you lead me in this conversation?
And when you mention the why, I think that's more important. Okay. And I
Mhm.
do stay in my lane. So I would definitely want to leave that up to you as the agent to have that
Mhm.
conversation of what's out there and what the pricing is.
Mhm.
But it also depends at what stage in their life.
Mhm.
Are they single? Do they have children? Do they, have a significant other? What are they looking for? And that's really kind of what's going to determine what program and what's out there to kind of meet their needs.
Mhm.
And how long. Most millennials and Gen Zers that I speak with tell me it's not their forever home.
Mm.
And that's really important to me because when we're talking about loan programs, some want to talk about the FHA and the fact mortgage insurance never drops off. Well, if you're making your normal mortgage payments on any loan that you don't have 20% down, the mortgage insurance wouldn't drop off till 10 years as long as you're not paying anything additional towards principal. So
Mhm.
if you're not going to be in the home in 10 years, is that really your main factor? So I really just try to dive into the same concepts. What are their goals? What does their future look like? And I do find with the millennials and Gen Zs that, they do like to, move and relocate, and they're just getting started in those aspects and getting financial aspects kind of under wraps as to where their future is going.
Mhm.
So having that long-term home, I don't think is necessarily on the top of the list.
Right. And that's the thing. I try to explain that. I'm like, hey, look, this house is not going to be forever. This is like the building house. Like, especially if you're somebody that's starting out, like it's your spouse, right? And you're starting to attack
Mhm.
life together, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, now, I'll get the house, I'll get like a townhome or something like that, right? And then I build some equity and then take that chunk of money and tie it to the next thing and tie it to the next thing and tie it to the next thing.
Yep.
So that way, by the time I'm at the second house, right, and I'm coming back to you to have a conversation about the fact I'm selling my house and I want to buy a new one, it's a much different conversation the second go around, because I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, Bill, I got about $60,000 worth of equity. You're like, Good. Let's go get some house then.
Well, that's building your wealth, right? And it's so
Right.
important. One of my favorite quotes to them is seize the opportunity.
Mm,
So many of buyers are calling and feel like they're priced out of the market,
mm,
but seizing that opportunity now, purchasing the home, getting in and building that wealth so that then they can turn around and buy their forever home is way more important than staying in a area that you're renting and you just can't control that. The one thing about the purchase transaction is that, and the one thing you're always going to be able to control, right, is the price that they paid for the home.
mm.
Everything else is what I would consider temporary. Get into the home so that when the rates do drop and you have that pull of buyers back into the market again, you're there. You're just doing a refinance. You're dropping your payments down. You're not out there with the fight. And, with the rates, or excuse me, the prices increasing about that 5% each year, you're really kind of committing and getting that under wraps now.
Right. So I got one last question before I let you go. Um, I want to talk a little bit about affordability because
Yeah.
with me, I always look at like the psychology of things and how people kind of process what's going on. And I know there's people out there right now that would like to buy, but they're trapped because they can't afford it. And I have conversations with me and my brother. We always conversations all the time, and we're somewhat like sleuths. We have to try to figure out where the hole is that
You're
can be
not
filled.
competitive, are you?
Just a little bit, just a little bit. So we were sitting down and actually, because we both used to be underwriters, or breaking down like what the average income is for people in the United States, what the median income is for people here in Florida, what the average debt is, and all that kind of stuff. And there legitimately there's just a group of people right now that are just trapped. They can't
Yeah.
make a move right now, but they want to. What do you tell somebody that it's like, okay, things are tight for you. I know what you want to do, but what would you tell me in that situation? I may be a little discouraged. Like,
Yeah.
what would you tell me?
Let's make a plan. That's always the big thing. And I always like to say, even if something's a no, it's not a no forever. It's a no, not right now. So let's figure out what that plan is. Having children, 3 boys, about the same age in that millennials and Gen Z era, save, save, save. And I know it's
Mm,
a tough market with affordability to say. It's easier to say that than to do it. But there
mhm,
are still programs out there that allow for down payment assistance for first time home buyers. Some is forgiven, some is not. There's also 100% programs. We also have a parent loan where the parent can give a gift or a down payment, and we will hold it as a second lien. So there's so many different options
wow.
that really we need to have that in-depth conversation that you would have with your trusted financial advisor. Same thing as you're purchasing a home, and walk through that process.
So if anybody's watching this, you have to know for a fact you have to have a lender on your team. You have to have one, because if you don't have one, these are things you
Mhm.
won't know. Just sitting back, just willy nilly, just waiting for things to happen, doesn't work that way. You got to have a lender to talk to. You got to have a lender to talk to. One thing I do appreciate you said is that you have to save money, and you said it, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily easy to do, because that's the conversation I have with people. It ain't easy, especially when you're like myself or like Trey. We like to buy car parts. So that don't make it any a bit easier when you're trying to modify a car and try to stack money. That we have to work twice as hard.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's hard when Trey's only 21. He
Mhm,
makes what I would consider great money for his age, but
mhm,
putting that little bit aside, we'll have to run those calculators, but just putting that little aside each paycheck, investing in your future. If your company offers a 401k, a lot of them will have matching, and you can do a loan or withdrawal from your 401k to use as down payment as
mhm.
well. The seller can contribute towards closing costs. So there's so many different options if you just kind of start this at that younger age and just put, it can be $50 a paycheck, $100 a paycheck, but
Right.
all of that's going to add up over time.
This is why you need somebody on your team. This is why you need a lender on your team, people. This is why you need a lender on your team. Somebody you can go to talk about this stuff, so that way you can set yourself up in order to
Yeah.
purchase a house, build some daggum equity, and then be able to move around and shake in this world. Because if you don't have that stuff, you don't want to be 40 years old trying to make this stuff happen. Though, even if you are 40 years old, you're starting out, you can. Just a
And you
little
don't want to be living with mom at 40 years old. Mom's going to say, time to go.
get out. Get out of the house. Go ahead and buy a crib. Awesome. Billi, I appreciate you being on with me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Geddis, so much.